For years, Florida's housing market was unstoppable. The Sunshine State became the nation's relocation capital, drawing remote workers, retirees, and investors from every corner of the country. Rents soared, condos flipped, and property owners called it the new gold rush. But in 2025, that gold rush has turned into a grind. Across Florida, the rental market is cracking faster than anyone expected. Vacancy rates are rising to their highest levels in more than a decade. Developers who built thousands of high-end apartments during the pandemic are struggling to fill them. And the same investors who once bragged about easy profits are now begging for tenants. According to Zillow and Realtor.com, Florida's average rent has dropped by nearly 7% in the past year, and in some cities, the fall is closer to 15%. What is driving the sudden crash? A combination of overbuilding, soaring insurance costs, stagnant wages, and slowing migration. Incentives are everywhere. Free rent offers, waived deposits, and gift cards just to sign a lease. The balance of power is shifting back to renters. Today on Discover the Nation, we revealed the top 10 Florida cities where the rental market is crashing fast. And before we begin, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications. Every week we explore the housing trends shaping America's future. Now, let's begin.
Number 10. Fort Lauderdale. Once a symbol of coastal luxury, Fort Lauderdale is feeling the chill. For years, it served as the affordable alternative to Miami's sky-high prices, but that affordability has vanished. Vacancy rates have doubled since 2022, now sitting near 9%. Median rents for a two-bedroom apartment have dropped from $3,200 to around $2,700. Developers who built entire blocks of glass towers along Las Olas Boulevard now offer free parking, rent credits, and gym memberships to attract tenants. The city's problems began when investors bet big on endless migration from the Northeast. They built too much, too fast, and at prices too high for local renters. Then came the insurance crisis. Flood risk, hurricane exposure, and property damage costs have all soared, sending annual premiums past $7,000 per unit in some buildings. Adding pressure, utility costs have jumped by almost 20% in a single year, eating away at renters' disposable income. The tourism slowdown in early 2025 has only deepened the vacancy problem. Broward County now reports that almost 1 in 10 rental units sits unoccupied, compared to just 4% before the pandemic. At the same time, short-term rental restrictions have squeezed the market. Thousands of Airbnb-style properties have converted into long-term rentals, flooding supply just as demand began to fall. Neighborhoods like Flagler Village and Victoria Park now show empty balconies where lights once glowed. Property managers call daily to offer deals, and new complexes are opening with half their units still vacant. Even longtime owners are quietly cutting prices to compete. Fort Lauderdale's rental story is no longer one of endless growth. It is a cautionary tale of what happens when optimism outpaces reality.
Number 9. Orlando. Orlando has always been the heart of Florida's tourism economy. The city of theme parks, conventions, and family vacations. But in 2025, that magic is wearing thin. Vacancy rates in the metro area have reached 9.5%. Median rent for a one-bedroom apartment has dropped from $1,900 to $1,600. Across Orange and Osceola counties, nearly 15,000 apartment units are sitting unleased, a record for the region. The cause is oversupply. During the pandemic, developers built aggressively around Lake Nona, Winter Garden, and downtown. They assumed remote workers and hospitality employees would keep the market hot. But when theme park attendance flattened and remote work shifted back to hybrid schedules, many renters left. Tourism still thrives, but wages have not kept pace with rent. The average hospitality worker in Orlando earns about $41,000 per year, far below what is needed to afford a standard lease. A growing number of residents are moving to smaller towns like Claremont, Eustis, and Ocala in search of relief. Meanwhile, thousands of short-term rental investors have pivoted to long-term leasing, overwhelming the market. AirDNA data shows that more than 6,000 former vacation properties have entered the traditional rental pool since 2023, pushing vacancies higher. Even high-end properties around International Drive and Millennium Mall are now offering multiple months free. Luxury buildings that once sold the idea of resort living are now struggling to maintain occupancy. In some areas, rents are down nearly 12% from their peak, the sharpest decline since 2009. For years, Orlando symbolized Florida's boom. In 2025, it has become one of its biggest corrections. If you want to understand how tourism and housing collide, subscribe to Discover the Nation, where data meets real life.
Number 8. West Palm Beach. West Palm Beach was once a playground for wealth, but it has become one of the clearest examples of a rental market losing altitude. Vacancies have climbed above 9%, and the average rent for a two-bedroom apartment is down nearly 11% from last year. The city's downtown area alone has added over 4,000 new luxury units since 2021, far outpacing demand. During the pandemic, Palm Beach County saw one of the largest migration waves in the nation. Wall Street firms opened satellite offices, luxury towers filled overnight, and landlords raised prices without hesitation. But that surge has reversed. Many remote workers have returned to major financial hubs like New York and Chicago, leaving hundreds of new units unleased. Developers along Flagler Drive and Rosemary Square overestimated long-term demand. Insurance premiums have doubled for many oceanfront properties, pushing smaller landlords to sell. Property taxes have also risen nearly 9% in 2 years, further squeezing owners. Even local restaurants and service businesses are feeling the fallout. As high-income renters leave, foot traffic declines and entire blocks of new retail sit half-empty. Hotel occupancy rates, a major driver of the local economy, are also down slightly compared to last year, signaling broader slowdown. The median rent has dropped from $3,000 to $2,700, and property managers admit that's still too high for most residents, whose median household income hovers just under $70,000. Behind the palm trees and polished streets, West Palm Beach faces a quiet economic realignment. The boomtown energy has faded, replaced by caution and adjustment. For the first time in years, renters have bargaining power, and landlords are discovering that Florida's prosperity can disappear as quickly as it came.
Number 7. Jacksonville. Florida's largest city by land area was supposed to be its most stable housing market. Affordable, family-friendly, and filled with steady military and logistics jobs. But Jacksonville's stability is starting to crack. Vacancy rates have crossed 8.7%, and rent growth has not just slowed, but reversed. Average rents have fallen nearly 8% from last year, with some neighborhoods seeing double-digit drops. The median rent for a two-bedroom apartment now sits near $1,500, down from $1,650 a year earlier. Developers added thousands of apartments along the South Side and St. John's Town Center corridor during the boom. Those units were meant to capture an influx of new residents from Georgia and the Carolinas, but migration has cooled sharply. The University of Florida's Bureau of Economic and Business Research reports that population growth in Duval County slowed by more than 40% compared to 2021. Meanwhile, construction never paused. Over 8,000 new units are scheduled for completion in 2025, further expanding supply. Insurance premiums have climbed by nearly 30% in 2 years, and property maintenance costs are at record highs. Many smaller landlords are raising rents simply to survive, driving longtime tenants out of the city entirely. In neighborhoods like Riverside, San Marco, and Springfield, for rent signs linger for months. Some owners now offer free utilities, waived deposits, or move-in credits. Even larger property groups are trimming rates by $200 to $300 per month to stay competitive. Jacksonville still benefits from a diversified economy and strong shipping sector, but its rental market has clearly overextended. The question now is not whether rents will rebound, but how long it will take before balance returns.
Number 6. Naples. Naples has always been Florida's picture of perfection. a postcard of wealth framed by white sand beaches, manicured streets, and glowing sunsets. For decades, it symbolized the dream of coastal living, quiet luxury, endless sunshine, and a market that seemed immune to economic storms. But in 2025, even paradise is feeling the pressure. Vacancy rates in Naples have climbed to nearly 10%, the highest in more than 10 years. Rents have fallen by over 10% since last year. Apartments that once leased for $3,500 now linger at $3,000, often with added incentives. Landlords who once had waiting lists are now offering free months, waived deposits, and even gift cards just to attract tenants. The problem is oversupply colliding with higher costs. Developers built thousands of new luxury condos and seasonal apartments during the boom, confident that wealthy retirees and snowbirds would keep coming. But those residents are rethinking their second homes. Property insurance premiums in Collier County have soared more than 60% since 2021, and homeowner fees, maintenance expenses, and utilities have all followed. Even Florida's most affluent homeowners are quietly scaling back. Meanwhile, the local economy that powered Naples' prosperity is cooling. Tourism has slowed, visitor spending is down nearly 8%, and hospitality jobs have dipped slightly as resorts and restaurants cut hours. Fifth Avenue South, once bustling with diners and luxury shoppers, now shows more for lease signs than it has in years. Younger professionals are leaving too, relocating inland to places like Ave Maria and Lehigh Acres, where rents can be hundreds cheaper and insurance manageable. Their departure has drained vitality from the coastal core, leaving high-end units empty and quiet. Naples remains breathtaking, but its confidence has faded. Beneath the calm beauty lies a fragile housing market searching for balance between image and reality. If you want to see where Florida's high-end boom is quietly breaking, subscribe to Discover the Nation. We uncover the truth behind America's changing coastlines.
Number 5. Sarasota. Sarasota was once the shining crown of Florida's Gulf Coast, a city where beauty, culture, and prosperity seemed perfectly aligned. Between 2020 and 2023, rents in Sarasota surged by more than 40%, one of the steepest increases anywhere in the nation. But by 2025, that explosive growth has turned sharply in the other direction. Vacancy rates have climbed to nearly 10%, the highest level in more than a decade. Average rents have fallen close to 9% over the past year, and the typical two-bedroom apartment that once rented for $2,600 now lists for about $2,300. What was once a landlord's market has shifted dramatically, and property owners are suddenly offering the kinds of incentives they never imagined just a few years ago. Developers built aggressively during the boom, adding thousands of luxury apartments and resort-style complexes across downtown and the surrounding neighborhoods. More than 7,000 new units have opened since 2022, but many are struggling to fill. Some properties report occupancy rates hovering around 60%. Leasing offices now advertise free parking, waived application fees, and even rent credits in an effort to attract tenants. Insurance costs along Florida's Gulf Coast have surged dramatically, adding to the pressure. Flood zone expansions have made coastal living more expensive and less appealing in areas such as Siesta Key and Lido Key. Many renters are now moving inland to Bradenton or Polk County, where monthly housing costs can be nearly a third lower. Economic data paints a clear picture of slowing momentum. Retail vacancies have risen by 6%, hospitality and service jobs have plateaued, and population growth has cooled to its slowest pace in 10 years. Sarasota's story is not one of collapse, but of correction. The city's housing market outpaced what local wages could sustain, and the pendulum is finally swinging back. For renters, it feels like long-awaited relief. For landlords, it is a sobering reminder that no boom lasts forever.
Number 4. Tampa. Tampa's real estate surge was legendary. During the pandemic, it became one of America's fastest-growing metro areas, drawing thousands of remote workers from the Northeast and Midwest. For a while, the growth seemed unstoppable. But in 2025, that boom is fading. Vacancies have climbed to 9%, and rents are down about 8% from last year. Luxury apartments in Channelside, Water Street, and Ybor City have been hit hardest. Downtown units that once rented for $3,000 now sit at $2,700 with free parking or waived deposits. Developers added more than 10,000 new apartments in just 3 years, expecting migration to continue at record levels. But those inflows have slowed. According to the University of South Florida's housing data, new resident arrivals have fallen nearly 30% compared to 2021. Meanwhile, insurance rates have doubled across much of Hillsborough County, and updated flood maps have pushed operating costs even higher. Tampa's once powerful affordability advantage has evaporated. Tenants who moved here to escape Miami's sky-high rent are now paying nearly as much, while wages have barely risen. The median household income stands around $73,000, but average two-bedroom rents still exceed $2,600, leaving many residents spending more than 40% of their income on housing. Even downtown, leasing offices now compete aggressively for tenants. 2 months free, free utilities, or prepaid gift cards are common. The frenzy of 2021, when landlords fielded multiple offers within hours, feels like another era. Tampa's skyline still glitters with cranes, but behind the construction boom lies a market struggling to absorb its own excess. The city that once symbolized opportunity now stands as a reminder that even Florida's hottest markets can cool when supply outruns reality.
Number 3, Miami. Miami has always been the heart of Florida's housing story, a city that once seemed untouchable, glamorous, and ever-expanding. For years, it was the face of global luxury, where ocean views commanded record-breaking rents, and every new tower reached higher than the last. But in 2025, Miami's unstoppable rise has finally hit a wall. Vacancy rates have soared to nearly 11%, the highest level since 2010. Average rent for a one-bedroom apartment has dropped from $3,800 to around $3,200. In many downtown neighborhoods, prices are down by almost 15% from their peak. The momentum that once defined Miami's housing market has abruptly reversed. Developers built as if demand would never end. From Brickell to Edgewater, glass towers sprouted across the skyline, many aimed at international investors rather than long-term residents. But when global markets cooled and foreign buyers stepped back, Miami was left with a glut of high-end apartments that few locals could afford. Between 2021 and 2024, Miami-Dade County added more than 25,000 new rental units, flooding a market that was already stretched thin. Then came the insurance crisis. Premiums for coastal properties have exploded, often exceeding $10,000 per unit each year. Smaller landlords are struggling to stay afloat, cutting rents or offering concessions simply to cover costs. The city's famous short-term rental sector has also stumbled. New restrictions have slashed Airbnb listings by nearly half, forcing thousands of former vacation rentals into the long-term market. The result is an oversupply unlike anything Miami has seen in more than a decade. Brickell, Winewood, and downtown now display "Available Now" banners where waiting lists once stood. Leasing offices are offering unheard-of deals, including up to 3 months free on annual leases. For decades, Miami symbolized coastal wealth and endless demand. In 2025, it symbolizes a turning point. The city built for limitless growth is now facing its limits, and for the first time in a generation, the dream of Miami living is meeting the reality of economic correction.
Number 2, Cape Coral. Cape Coral was once the fastest-growing rental market in Florida. Its canals, waterfront homes, and relatively low prices made it a pandemic magnet for retirees and remote professionals alike. But in 2025, that wave has receded. Vacancy rates have surged above 11%, and average rents have fallen nearly 12% from their 2022 highs. Two-bedroom homes that rented for $2,200 are now sitting at $1,900, sometimes with weeks of no interest. The aftermath of Hurricane Ian continues to shape the city's fortunes. Thousands of rebuilt or repaired homes have come back online, swelling supply just as migration slowed. Insurance premiums have doubled in many neighborhoods, and power costs have risen sharply, pushing many households to relocate inland. Developers had banked on an endless inflow of retirees and out-of-state workers. Instead, population growth in Lee County has flattened. According to state housing data, new construction completions outnumbered incoming renters by more than 2 to 1 in 2024. At the same time, rising costs have eroded Cape Coral's affordability edge. Utility bills averaged 30% higher than they did in 2021, and property taxes have jumped almost 9% in a single year. Many middle-income renters are now migrating to nearby Lehigh Acres and North Fort Myers, where rents are hundreds of dollars cheaper. The once booming construction sector is slowing rapidly. Builders are shelving projects, and realtors are reporting record cancellations. Investors who bought properties at the peak are now offering discounts or lease-to-own deals to cover costs. Cape Coral's crash is a clear signal that Florida's housing cycle has turned from expansion to survival. The canals still sparkle, but beneath the surface lies a market struggling to stay afloat.
Number 1, Pensacola. At the top of our list is Pensacola, a city few ever expected to struggle. Known for its naval base, pristine beaches, and small-town charm, Pensacola was considered recession-proof. But in 2025, even this Gulf Coast favorite is feeling the strain of Florida's rental correction. Vacancy rates have exploded past 12%, the highest in the state, while rents have fallen nearly 13% year over year. The median rent for a two-bedroom apartment has dropped to just under $1,400, its lowest level since 2018. Developers added more than 5,000 new apartments across Escambia and Santa Rosa County since 2020. Those units were built for a population boom that never arrived. Instead, population growth has slowed to barely 1% annually. Combined with inflation, rising construction costs, and surging insurance premiums, the market is severely out of balance. Job losses in logistics, construction, and hospitality have deepened the slowdown. The once bustling downtown corridor shows more now leasing banners than any time in the past decade. Local property managers admit that even cutting rents is not filling units quickly enough. Insurance rates along the Gulf Coast have more than doubled since 2021, adding thousands to landlords' yearly expenses. Many small investors who entered during the boom are now exiting entirely, flooding the resale market. Pensacola's rental slide carries a message for the rest of Florida. Even steady, well-rounded cities can overshoot when construction, migration, and insurance costs collide. What was once considered the state's most stable coastal market is now its most revealing cautionary tale. Pensacola remains beautiful, but behind the calm waters lies a lesson in overconfidence, the kind that turns a boom into a burden.
From Miami to Pensacola, Florida's rental market is undergoing its biggest reset in more than a decade. For years, the state's housing boom was fueled by optimism, migration, and cheap money. Now the cycle is reversing. Landlords are learning that demand is not endless. Renters are finally regaining power. And Florida's future will depend on balance, not speculation. This is not the end of the Sunshine State story, but a turning point. Thank you for watching Discover the Nation. If this story opened your eyes, subscribe, like, and share. Every week, we uncovered the real stories behind America's housing shifts and economic transformations. Because to understand the future, you have to follow where the rent is falling fastest.